Good afternoon, team. Welcome to a Dunedin special of BHN, where we're talking to mayoralty candidates. And today we welcome Bill Acklin to the show. Bill, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Pat.
Good to be with you, man. Nice to have you on board.
Thank you.
What's been going on today? What have you been up to? Anything exciting? What's the Sunday for Bill Acklin?
Yeah, just a few little chores out of the house. Obviously, supermarket stuff and bit of car cleaning, and that's pretty much been it.
You're someone who's having a run at mayoralty. Obviously, we're talking to mayoralty candidates. You're someone who has been in council before from 2004 to 2013. Forgive me for not knowing. I didn't arrive into Dunedin until 2014, so that's when I moved to Dunedin. Your exit from the council then, was that a choice by you or not making the vote? How did that all come around?
Yeah, it was a choice by me. As you said, I was elected in 2004. We had 6 years of the Peter Chin mayoralty driving it. And then, of course, in 2010, that changed to Dave Cull and more in particular, I suppose, Greater Dunedin. And I suppose by the time that 3-year period was almost up, I sort of thought, I'm not being effective enough here at the moment. There's too much control one way. And I suppose I didn't really agree with the road that was going down, so I decided to stand down at that time, not dismissing the possibility of coming back at a later date.
Explain to me too much control one way. What does that mean?
When you have party politics, so when we talk about party politics, we're not just talking about central government, as in Labour, Greens, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You also have your local version of that. And by 2010, there were 5 from Greater Dunedin that were council.
Just so I understand, was Greater Dunedin the name of like is it Team Dunedin this time around with Jules Radich?
Yes,
Greater Dunedin's the group. Gotcha.
Same sort of principle. Yep. Yeah. So call it a campaigning group is really what they're supposed to be. Because in essence, you'd like to think that every representative on council was in an independent sort of a way that they could, listen, debate, and vote based on what they think. I don't believe that was the case at that time. How Team Dunedin choose to do it going forward, and however, the dice roll at this coming election, I've got no idea, so I can't speak to that. But when it comes to the Greater Dunedin, there was absolutely no way, in my opinion, that there wasn't a collective, group voting, collective intentions to, block other ideas and so on and so forth.
So I talked to Jules Radich yesterday, and he was talking, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote in my head, but he was talking basically about the mayor's councillors. And I kind of said, are you actually, what he was saying is there is a block within council now that are on a particular side of the political spectrum that he was identifying as a group. Now, what you're saying is the group you're identifying in 2010 was an official group. They were part of the same local body political party, for want of a better word. Am I correct in that assertion so far?
Yeah, that's right. And they were clear on the fact that they, campaigned as a group and that they had, like-minded ideas and so on. But once the council got rolling, it was very much that, and they used to say that they didn't caucus, but I know that that's not true.
But how's that any different in practice to a group of 6 individuals who always vote together, who are in the same kind of political spectrum, like how's it any worse than the other? Because you're always going to have a majority and a minority pretty much of a perspective. That's how bills get passed, I guess, or legislation gets passed. So how's that a bad thing, and how's it any different from just like if everyone was independent but the majority was always voting one way?
Well, as you alluded to just before, when you look at the council we have now, so you have the mayor, you have the deputy mayor, and you have a certain group of people that are always sitting on that particular side of the fence, if that's the way to word it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, that's no different to what it was under the greater Dunedin sort of rule, as I would call it, back in 210 to 213. Of course, that then carried on for the next 6 years after that. And so it's not much different. But I suppose, you refer to having a particular way of group voting that happens to get bills passed and all that sort of thing when you're talking central government. Well, again, that's normally party driven in terms of their beliefs and the direction they want to go in. I don't believe that fits with local government. I think that local government really does need to have, whatever the issue is, whatever the discussion is, whatever the debate is, people should be able to go through that process and vote the way they see fit, not in a particular block.
I guess, I mean, I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I also think what you're saying is a little bit oversimplified, because whether they're an official, let's not talk about the issue necessarily right now, but if we're talking about, say, the pedestrianisation of George Street, which we will talk about, there is going to be a block, whether they're official or not, who are always going to vote the way for, say, more cyclists and more pedestrians, whether they're organised or not. I don't know how much the organising of a group making it Greater Dunedin is going to make a difference. And I don't know if, like, when you say they should always vote sort of independently based on what's happening, if that's their political ilk, then they are voting independently of the thing in front of them, even if it always happens to be the same way. Like someone who wasn't in favor of that, was on the other side of the would always be voting independently, but it would always be the other way. So I see what you're saying, and I like the idea, and I think it's fair, but I also think it's a little bit not the real world, if you know what I'm saying. Not in a disrespectful way, but it's not how the world works. It's unlikely that you're going to get people who sit politically in one area then vote with a completely opposing whatever that position is in an issue. They're always going to kind of stay in that world anyway, good, bad, or indifferent.
And that's fair comment. And I think what you're talking about there really is just balance of power. And let's face it. You're saying when you were in 2010 to 2013, the balance of power didn't favour you, and you thought, I can't do anything, so I'm gone. Is that basically what you're saying? No, not quite like that at all. No, I'm not saying it didn't favour me, because I've never ever gone on to council or been on council with pet projects, my own particular course already set in concrete. Not at all. I've always listened to community. I've listened to the various topics that have come up around the council table, and regardless, I have voted the way that I see fit. And you could say, is that left or is that right or whatever? To be honest, I think it has bounced in different ways.
So you're saying if we investigated your political voting record, you're saying we would see a balanced voting system where sometimes you'd maybe side with what we're going to identify as left voting. Sometimes you might identify what we might say is right voting, but you're saying you do it on issues basis, not political ideology.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering as well, it's a bit of a side point though. Like when you leave, I mean, the full-time councillor is a paid gig. If you've done it for, what was that, 6, 8 years, 9 years, obviously that becomes your job and your income and that kind of stuff. What do you do when you leave council and then you got to pay the bills and that sort of thing? How does that work?
Well, look, to be honest, as a councillor, I would call it a part-time role. Well, at least it was back then, that it was classed as 29 hours a week on average is what was expected. That the average councillor was doing. At the time, I was very heavily involved with entertainment, and the two fitted together very well, because my argument quite simply was they don't have council meetings on a Saturday night, and so I was able to do both. at the time of leaving council in 2013, I wanted a total change. And so I went and got a job.
Right. Doing what? So what have you done for the last, 9 years?
9 years, yeah. So for the first 3 or 4 years, probably for the first 5 years, so 13 through to 17, 4 years, I was in a couple of different sales roles, both working with people in their own homes around insulation for their homes. So in particular,
was that a bit weird for sometimes the people of Dunedin seeing the city councillor coming in to talk to them about insulation?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, not at all. Didn't have a problem with that at all, because like at the end of the day, we were having one-on-one conversations. They knew that I was coming. They knew what I was going to be talking about. And in one role, it was retrofit double glazing. Another role, it was insulating walls of older houses without having to rip all the inner boards off, etc. So, they were particular technologies at the time that are still very, very prominent out there. And when you're working with people in their own homes, it's not just about what you're there to present to them. It's about them. It's about their home. It's about their situation. And again, I'll very much say it's about listening. And so it was great. I loved it. Yeah. And then since 2017, I went from the domestic sort of side of sales, you might say, into the B2B, business to business.
Yep. And
I've been working with for a company that provides employment relations and health and safety assistance for small to medium-sized businesses. And so again, we're in that one-on-one, face-to-face. Other than COVID, of course, there's a lot of Zoom. Just talking about their business, about their situation, how compliant are they, and do they need help?
So when you have a full-time gig, full-time job, and I'm assuming you tell the boss or the management level above you or whatever it is that you are running for mayor, how does that conversation happen? Because I imagine, especially in the next 4 or 5 weeks, there'll be a lot of downtime during work hours, actually having to say, vote for me. How does that work with a full-time job?
Yeah, well, again, there's not a lot of things happening in daytime hours. Okay. A lot of the meetings that we're going to are actually early evening. There's 1 or 2 during the day. Likes of today's on a Sunday, next Saturday's the youth council. So, a lot of things are actually working really well for somebody to still hold down a Monday to Friday job. By all means, when it comes to the variations with that, I talk to my employer, and whether it's annual leave or whatever, we just make it work.
I'm wondering, and no commentary on your employer or no comment you need to make, is if I was a boss who had a good employee and I realized that they were not only running for mayor but council, meaning I'd probably lose them, I might be a little bit reticent as to give them the time off to then go and basically you're applying for a new job, Bill. That's what you're doing, isn't it? And you're telling your boss, I'm applying for a new job.
You can very much take it that way, Pat. And I must admit, I had concerns about it beforehand, but I'm working for a very large company. And so I just went straight through to our HR department and said, look, this is what I want to do. What are the rules? What's the company's perspective on it? And they just quite simply came back and said, do not associate the company name with what I'm doing in a political field and fill your pockets.
I was just looking, just out of interest, we're talking about remuneration. This is from a 2020 ODT article, says that I don't quite understand it because it says committee chairmen. Oh no, okay, no, I do understand now. Committee chairmen and women will be paid. I thought it was committee chairman and then women would be paid something different. But what they mean is committee chair people will be paid 85,786. Other council members will be paid 71,488. The mayor is paid 166,000, and the deputy mayor paid 90,000. So that was a couple of years ago. Not that we're interested in your financial dealings, but is that significantly different from 2010? Are those numbers increased, or is it much of a muchness inflationary change?
I can tell you, when I left council in 2013, I was chair of community development, so that's one of the standing committees, and my salary at the time was 50,000.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm dyslexic, and I was staring at that for about 3 minutes trying to figure it out, because it says here committee chairmen and women, and I read committee chairman being a group of people and women, like all women, but it means committee chair people. committee chair people, be they men or women. So yeah, I was kind of going, hang on, what? But anyway, that's my brain.
Yeah. I hear you.
Why don't we talk about the pedestrianisation of George Street? It'd be cool to get your thoughts on that. You've watched some of the other conversations I've had, and as you know, we sort of have a wide-ranging and free-flowing conversation, but it is really based around some of the big issues that people want to know about for their potential mayor. You are running for council as well, though, as we said before. As every mayoralty candidate is, except for Aaron Hawkins, and I wonder if that's a practice. Like, is it that the mayor is not allowed to run for council, or kind of the mayor just doesn't run because to go from mayor to being a council member would be strange? I'm assuming it's more of a not the done thing.
Well, no, it's happened before, very much so.
Oh, has it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. The mayor of Dunedin from 1989 to 1995 was Richard Walls.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, there was a huge change in the way that the local government structure was. We had, borough councils and all that sort of thing, and it all became amalgamated. In 1995, Richard only stood for the mayoralty and was subsequently voted out. Suki Turner became mayor at the time.
Right.
In 98, he stood again for both mayor and council and was re-elected back onto council. So he'd done 6 years as the mayor, obviously a 3-year gap. And then from 98 through until, I think, what was it? Was it 2013 or 2010? 2010, I think it might have been. Richard was back on council for as a councillor for all that time, and held in very high regard. Chair of finance and strategy and so on.
All right. Let's have a look at it's one of the conversations that we've been having with everybody. I think there's most of these conversations we've had with everybody. A few due to time, we've kind of picked the big ones and then not gone to other ones. But the pedestrianisation of George Street. Now, to make that clear, you're clear, obviously, for other people, sometimes there's some confusion between the one-way system and making George Street one way. So we're talking about pedestrianisation of George Street, making it one way, lowering the speed limit, for a sector of George Street. Kind of, it's the Meridian Mall sort of area, isn't it? Out that side of it. Where are you sitting on this? Are you pro? Are you con? And give us your rationale.
Pedestrianisation always concerns me because the more space you make to have the planters and the seating and various things encroaching out into the greater footpath, the roading, etc., means that it's harder for vehicles. Now, I appreciate that's very controversial, and there's a huge split.
I was going to say, I don't think it's very controversial. I think that comes with the title, the pedestrianisation of it. By definition, I think probably makes it more difficult for vehicles. I think that's probably it, eh?
Well, it does. But what I mean, though, is that there are a lot of people that are in favour of pedestrianisation, not just for that purpose, but to try and get rid of the cars. Okay. And I know that's that's where the ideology comes in, and that is that if you get rid of the cars, you're helping climate change and all that sort of thing. But we're not that far ahead at this point. And as much as I'd love to see a public transport in our city that would well and truly meet that of big metro cities around the world, it's just not the case. And when it comes to cycling, if you want to ride a bike, I've got no problem with that at all. But the thing is that Dunedin's got too many hills. And so it's going to work if you're on the flat. So if you're coming from South Dunedin through to North Dunedin, not a problem. But what about the rest of the city that goes up over the hills? And I know electric bikes can be argued and all that sort of thing. But again, how do you do a week's worth of grocery shopping on a bike? How do you take your...
I'd like to expand on something you've just said. You talk about a lot of people that want to get rid of cars. Like, I don't know if there is... Well, no, I was going to say anybody. There's always going to be somebody. But I was going to say anybody who actually wants to get rid of all cars. But, I mean, what I hear you saying is, how do you go shopping? Well, you go shopping with your car. How do you go into town? You can ride into town. It doesn't necessarily mean there's only one answer. I mean, like I'm thinking about New World in Northeast Valley. I'm thinking about Countdown to New World on the one ways. I'm thinking about Roslyn. I think it's called Fresh Choice. They've all got their own car parks. So that's not being hindered going supermarket shopping, pedestrianisation of George Street. And you say a lot of people who, do you have any kind of, are you saying this more like man on the street, I've heard things said, or do you actually know without question that there are many people who are in positions of sort of voting power who want to, quote, get rid of cars?
Yeah, I'd go more that way, Pat, quite simply.
Okay.
Well, that's the message that's coming across. It's the pedestrianisation and getting rid of car parks, which makes it very difficult to use a car in the CBD. And I'm not talking about grocery shopping there. I'm talking about people going to
cool.
types of appointments and even just going shopping. Unless you're going to buy something that just fits into a carry bag, what are you going to do with it when you get to the bus stop, or how are you going to get it to the bus stop? So
the parks that are in George Street, the parks for George Street that will be impacted there's not a lot. I know that there's parking issues in Dunedin. I had a big conversation with Jules Radich about this yesterday, but the pedestrianisation of George Street is not going to lose a lot of car parks because there's still all the side street parking.
Yeah, but that's taken away.
But that's sort of a moot point then, isn't it, about the pedestrianisation? And like, I know if I'm going shopping, let's say I'm going to the Meridian Mall, I'm going to the Meridian Mall car park. If I'm going shopping to a like 2 Degrees, it's in George Street, maybe I'll park outside 2 Degrees, but maybe I'll park in the side street. So I'm not, look, to be honest with you, look, let me be really clear, Bill, because I'm not like a massive person and fan of pedestrianisation, but what I am for George Street, what I am is trying to figure out why, or from someone like yourself, why not? So if you say something to me that I kind of go, but hang on, I'm going to ask you about your points. I'm not trying to enforce my view, because I already know that if it does get pedestrianised, if it goes that way, and I want to go to 2 Degrees, for example, then I'll be pissed if I can't park right outside it for a second. But if I want to go for a coffee or something, I'll love it because there'll be more space for me. So that's sort of where my head is. So just so you're clear, when I'm kind of pushing you to explain, it's because I want you to explain it to me and to the people watching why you think good or bad. So the parking in George Street question, I don't know if the pedestrianisation of George Street is such a big deal, because it's not losing that many parks, and the parks that it will be losing are the kind of 5-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute ones, not the 90-minute, 60-minute, 90-minute ones, or the certainly obviously not losing the stuff that's already in the parking buildings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, look, Pat, I totally hear where you're coming from. And my concern is it's those 5, 15, 30-minute parks that are the concern. If you're going to be in town for that coffee and you're catching up with people or whatever it might be, then, of course, you've got a whole big bunch of options. You can park in a parking facility. You can take a bus. You can walk. You can ride your bike, do whatever you want to do. It's the short-term visits into town that I very much am concerned about when it comes to those parks. And as I said to you before, we've already lost a whole lot of them. And I remember being part of a parking review working group back in, it must have been about 2006 or thereabouts. And I remember somebody saying, whatever we do, we're on a hiding to nothing.
Sure.
So
it's a lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose. But one of the things that came up, which I did not agree with, was, in the main street, and that was back at the time where it was more so parking meters, I suppose. Or maybe the plan display was out by then. But nonetheless, the maximum time that you could park in the main street was 30 minutes. Yeah. And then round the corner into the side streets, it might have gone to 60. But then that was changed, and I certainly didn't agree with it at the time, even though I was labelled with being on that working group. was they made everything 4 hours. You could park in the main street for 4 hours at that time, but it was going to cost you, I think it was something like about $4 an hour or something like that. And at the time, that was an expensive car park in the city, but
yeah.
My point is I don't agree with that sort of thing. But again, as time has progressed on, there's been parks taken away. They've been swapped around for whether it be bus stops or couriers,
loading bays, or whatever. Yep.
And again, very important. And I know that Jules has come up with a few suggestions around how to potentially juggle things whereby mobility parks and the courier parks and the like, loading zone equivalents, are shared. Now, again, there's a lot of work to have to be done to work out as to whether that would actually be effective or not. But the way that I see it, the short-term parking, half of it's already been taken away, and I believe a full review needs to be done with the view to bring that back.
Okay. Do you, being outside of council now, like you're a full-time worker, man on the street yourself, do you have access to all the numbers that you need? So, like, one of the things I'd like to know, and it's my bad that I don't have this. I'm looking at some of the imagery for people who are listening and not watching of the proposed sketches for the one way, and you can see within this is the George Street pedestrianisation, that there is still short-term parking. So on the side there is still short-term parking outside some of the shops. So what I'd like to know, I don't want to sound like a dick, but kind of to validate your concerns, is are we losing 90% and there's only now going to be 2 left? Are we losing 30% and we're going to get the pedestrianisation for it? Because that would have a determining factor on whether I go, oh yeah, cool, or not, because there are obviously definitely still short-term parks there, because you can see them in the imagery that we've been given. Look, all the way up the side there, there's short-term parking. But what I don't know is there were 80 there, there's now 14 or whatever the number is. Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know either, Pat.
Well, that's probably that's probably quite an important thing to know, especially if that's one of the concerns of losing short-term parking. I mean, if it was a loss of 10% of short-term parking, not such a big deal. If it was a loss of 90%, more of a big deal for the point.
My concern though is too much has already been taken away over the last 10 years. And so I think
if you were mayor, you'd be actively trying to bring back more short-term parking to George Street. Is that like
yes,
a policy, a pledge you're making?
No, the way that I word it quite simply is it's not just George Street. It's all the streets off George Street as well. You know, you don't have to get a park right outside the shop on the main street, but you need to have the ability to park somewhere in the proximity. And the pledge, if that's what you want to call it, because I wouldn't call it a policy. The pledge that I would have is a full review of parking of the greater CBD area needs to be under, because just over the years it's chipped away and chipped away and chipped away, and because of the lack of on-street parking, a lot of people just aren't going into town anymore.
You've identified things like bus stops, mating loading bays, that kind of stuff as well. So where do all they go? So if you're going to bring back parking, you're not going to get more meterage of a road. Like the road's only already 40 meters long. You can't make it 50 meters long to slide more parks in there. So in this policy review you're looking at doing, what happens to the bus stops? What happens to the loading bays? What happens to the, disabled car parks? What happens to the motorbike car parks? Whatever that has now taken them, what happens to them?
Yeah, but well, of course they're all important, but it's not just those that have taken them. There are parts of the different blocks in the council that are taken up by extended footpath areas. Now, we don't have 1 million people in Dunedin. I've never seen footpaths crowded like you might see in New York or in Melbourne or whatever. We don't need as much footpath space as what we've got, and the way this pedestrianisation is being proposed for George Street, there's going to be more and more of that, giving more pedestrian space that actually isn't needed.
So, talking about where we're at today, right? Not the new proposals. You actually want less pedestrianisation than there is right now. You want to make it. You may not say the word harder, but whatever. You want there to be less space. As mayor, you'd like to see less space for pedestrians than there is today to walk on, and more space for vehicles. That's what you're saying.
When I say more space for vehicles, I'm talking about more opportunity for access.
Yeah, I know, but from what there is, but I'm saying from what there is today, from what it is today, right? So today, whatever it is, the 11th of the 9th from today, if I was to go down George Street today, if you could wave your magic mayoralty wand, you would want to see tomorrow less space for pedestrians than there is right now, because you've talked about extended footpaths, and more space for cars. Yeah, well,
the way you're pitching that though, Pat, is it makes it sound like I want to get rid of the pedestrians. No, I don't.
I haven't said that. No. I'm just literally, Bill. Sorry, I don't mean to bang on it, but I'm literally just asking you to clarify what you've said, because what you've just said, when you were looking for more car parks, is things like extended footpaths. The only logical conclusion I can go is, so therefore you want to reduce those extended footpaths to make more space for car parks. By definition, that's less space for pedestrians and more space for cars. because you're putting more car parks in where currently there are pedestrians. I didn't say less pedestrians. I said less space for pedestrians.
Short answer, yes.
Okay. And just in case my grandmother's watching from heaven, I know I said less pedestrians there and I should have said fewer. I apologize. Fewer pedestrians. Okay. Hey, okay, good to know. Like, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure these things out. And the thing I've said to everybody, that's not even just what is about today that we know about before the council. It's about in 2024, when you would be mayor, what kind of mayor will you be? What kind of decisions will you make? And what I'm hoping is that these conversations will teach us a bit more about who you are, what you think in general, maybe not so specifically about some things, to think, well, when subject X comes up in 2024 that we can't foresee, what are you likely to do? Because that's the thing about putting someone into a 3 or 4 year term, isn't it? It's like, it's not just what they're doing today, it's what they're going to do. I mean, imagine if we had have known about COVID, before COVID happened, would that have changed how people voted before COVID? Perhaps it would have, perhaps it wouldn't have. I don't know, but it was an unforeseen situation that if we had have thought about what could happen, that might inform us how we vote. And that's the reasons I'm pushing you on those sorts of questions, to learn out more about you, how you operate, how you would be as the, I guess, what is it, the leader of the city? Is that what the mayor is officially, unofficially?
Well, the way I see the mayoralty, quite simply, is the mayor, of course, is the chair of council as a whole. He's not the chair of everything. He's the chair of council as a whole. He's still only got one vote, or she. They've still only got one vote.
Good save, by the way.
Pardon?
That's a good save, by the way. Throwing that she in there at the end. Good save. Yeah, right.
Yeah, whoever she may be. That's right. And look, at the end of the day, the mayor still needs to have 7 others go with that, with them to be able to make any decision. And so, from my perspective, the way that I'd be dealing with those things all the way through is, first up, you've got to realize is I'm very, very community driven. Mm-hmm. I am very, very focused on our senior population, our elderly folk. In my entertainment life, I put it this way: I started out playing in rest homes when I was 13, and the rate things are going at the moment, I'm probably going to end up finishing my career playing in rest homes,
whilst living in one, maybe in the future. You could be paid for board bill.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to comment on that, but
I'm talking about 20 years, by the way. There's no comment on your age, but I was talking about like 20 years from now, you could end up there. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, my wife and I have parents in rest homes now, and aside from that, though, I've always gone along and entertained in rest homes throughout my 40 years in the music game, and I just think that's something I can do. It's something that works for them. And it's a give back to the community. But I'm also very aware of how mobility challenges and things like that for anybody as they get older, and sometimes not even getting that old. Mobility is a massive issue. And when I get back to, I'm going to double back a little bit here, Pat, that when we talk about access to the city, it's the access for people with mobility issues, and those mobility issues may only be temporary, but nonetheless, you've still got to be able to get somewhere. You've still got to be able to get around. I think that the our older population who are encouraged to stay in their homes needs support, and so whatever council can do, whether it's through at times there can be rates relief. There can be there used to be an electricity fund. I don't know if it's still in place or not, but just helping those who are on pensions be able to actually survive and get through life, when either they've ended up on their own or that they don't have the income. Now, obviously, council can't do everything in that regard, but I think we should be doing everything that we can. When it comes to the business side of the city, again, same sort of thing. I've spoken to a number of business. In fact, I've been talking to business owners for the last 5 years in the job I'm in now, and we certainly haven't talked about council things on a regular basis. But at their discretion, there have been comments made that the council doesn't do anything to help us. one that I spoke to recently said that, years ago, councillors and senior management used to go out and visit businesses. And They said, we haven't seen anybody. But whether that's happening or not, I can't say, because I'm not on council now. It may well be that is happening. We just don't hear about it. But it's very, very important for the elected arm of council and senior management to be visiting as many businesses, as many industries as possible, so as we are in touch. The other thing that became very apparent to me through the annual plan process, and of course we were observing those meetings through Zoom, is Business South, which is of course now the new entity incorporating the Chamber of Commerce and Employees Association. The submission they put to council quite simply was, for crying out loud, use them. They are there. They are the linker between council and at least 1,000 businesses or 1,500 businesses that they have as members. And so in that regard, the fronting up and supporting and listening to business owners' concerns is a big thing for me, and would encourage how I would vote, as you say, in 2024 or 25 or whatever it might be. Same thing with the older generation.
It's so funny, and it's. I don't want to keep talking about pedestrianisation, but I'm sure you can see how, when you're talking about access for mobility, kind of saying we need the cars to be able to get in there, someone else from the other perspective might say access for mobility, hence we need more space for pedestrians. And I'm thinking about like wheelchairs and that kind of stuff. So I can see how both sides, if there are sides, can use that rationale to support their own narrative. We want vans and stuff to be able to get in for the elderly or infirmed. We want sidewalks or footpaths to be wider. Things like wheelchairs and stuff can get through so easily. So you can see why there is so much nuance in these sorts of conversations. Hey, I want to also ask you, because I've got it up here, because you've talked about being an entertainer. Who owns the Highlanders song? Do you own it, or do the Highlanders own it, or does someone else? The Otago Highlanders. Actually, before we do, I'll just give this 10 seconds. People obviously know this from Dunedin, but one of the areas that people seem to know you most from is this. So the story behind that, did you pen it? Did you write it? Is it your song? Do you own it? How does it all work?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I wrote the song back in '97. I was approached by one of the local radio stations to put together like a jingle or a chant or something to promote the team at the ground. They had basically no budget. And I said to them, after playing around with it for a bit, and I said, I can give, because I wanted something to fit 30 seconds, as radio normally does. Said, right, I can give you a 20-second chant, as they wanted, or I can give you a 20-second sort of jingle chorus type thing, or I can put it together in a song, whereby initially it was only a couple of long because it didn't have the second verse in the original format of the song. And they said, oh, look, the song's great. Yeah, we'll take the song and we'll use that. Thank you very much. And so after basically demoing it and speaking it, put it together in a playable format for the radio and for the ground. And then, and when, I'm not sure how much you know about copyright and all that sort of thing, but whenever you do something like that, whoever it is that, as you said, pens it, owns it, you have to register it with APRA, of course. But and of course, that's what I did. So the song's always been in my ownership. However, in '98, so the year later, a second verse was added to it. And that was written by Ron Polensky. And Ron Polensky at the time was the media liaison person for the Highlanders. Ron's an author. He was also the, I guess still is. I'm assuming that the Sports Hall of Fame is still in play, but Ron has been the top dog there ever since it opened in Dunedin back in, it must have been about 98, 99 or thereabouts. And so, technically speaking, Ron's got a small percentage of ownership because he wrote the words for that second verse.
Got some points, as they say.
Correct. And then in 99, by then the song had sort of taken hold, and it was a case of trying to get it out there. Back in those days, the easiest way to do it was put it on cassette tape.
Right, yep.
It was cassette tape. So it was like a single, so the same song on both sides.
Yep.
And that year we sold 2,500 copies, which for a local thing was actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
And to the extent that I used to get bailed up on the street by parents of young kids saying, "You bastard." We've been away on holiday and that song was on all the way there and all the way back, and we're over it. But no, it was a lot of fun, and changes to the way in which the Super Rugby structure came. We had to take the Otago out of the song,
right?
In 2003, I think it was.
So what is it now? Rather than Otago Highlanders, what's that first line then? Because it's got to be the same syllables, I'm assuming.
Oh God, yeah, it's been played around with too many times, but no, it became the Otago was replaced with Go, basically. So Go O Highlanders is what we had to
Go O Highlanders, right?
Which really didn't. Well, it wasn't flash, but the thing was, I'd go out onto Carisbrook singing Go O Highlanders, but the terrorists and everybody was still singing
Otago. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was playing lip service to a rule across the whole Super Rugby platform.
Do you think it? If you were to rank that beside the Waisake no Holo chant, which has been, which is I know you might be a bit biased here, but which is a better or more well known or more still used in the stands of recent years?
So which chant's that, Pat?
Oh, the Waisake chant that everyone used to do. Waisake no Holo. That one that went through the whole crowd.
No, I don't know it, to be honest. I don't know it. No.
Huh. Are you still yeah, are you still involved at all? Do you still get along? Do you still see things?
Not really. No. Since Carisbrook folded, or not folded, it was closed down, of course, in favour of the stadium. The Highlanders song became extinct, really, because the whole purpose of it was "Welcome to the House of Pain." The House of Pain is Carisbrook, and so it didn't fit with the stadium. So since 2011, it really hasn't been a part of it at all, and neither have I. However, in 2020, so 2 years ago, they decided they wanted to redo the Highlander song all over again. And
I saw something on Facebook that you had performed it or something, the new one.
Yeah, so we re-recorded it to reflect being able to be used at the stadium, and I actually sang it there twice, and it was sort of left at that point. So obviously I didn't cut the mustard.
There was also when Tane Randall was captain. Welcome to the House of Tane. That was in there for a while. This is the I think this is the Waisake song.
He's the Fijian flyer.
I'm trying to find that. That's more of a chant, but it went around the stadium. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing you got to remember is a lot of teams have chants, and Otago did before the Highlanders came about. The ground at Carisbrook, people were always just chanting Otago, and that was it all the time. Otago, top of their voices. Well, if you listen to the Highlanders song, it's Otago Highlanders. That's where I got it from. What they used to do at the ground, and it came from a chant and became a song.
Let's get back to some issues. I mean, they're interesting to know more about you and about what you're about and where you've come from, that sort of thing. But let's get back to some of the issues that people are actually going to be voting on. Or maybe they will vote on someone, I don't know, someone who can do the national anthem best of all from up the front. Maybe that will get you some votes. Let's look, and this has been an interesting area of contention in my first 4 or 5 chats. The one ways becoming two ways. because there is a bit of controversy around that, with there being a passing of a vote, and then a group of councillors led by Jules Radich, submitting to, I think, the minister their displeasure as to the process that had been followed, even though the process to get the vote through seemed to be above board, obviously, but they're not being happy with the outcome. So they've kind of, my words now, and I'm probably being unfair, but kind of chucked their toys a bit and went above the head of the council to the big wigs. And I've been finding it quite interesting, because not that my perspective matters, but I've been kind of going like, what's the need for a change for the one ways to two ways? If there's two lanes north, 2 lanes south on different streets, becomes 2 lanes north, 2 lanes south on each street, or 1 lane on each street, but still the same amount of capacity. So it's been a bit not confusing, like I don't get it, but confusing as to why this has become such a big deal. It is a big deal though, because obviously it's a huge investment should it happen, and it seems to be dividing the city a fair bit. So talk to me about the one ways becoming 2 ways here in Dunedin.
Well, I've been here since I was 3. I was born in Oamaru, so call me Dunedin my whole life. I've known nothing but the one ways.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, the one ways are, they've worked, they're great, they're familiar. And I would automatically resort to saying the one ways should stay.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, as you said, if we have two ways, you've still got the same amount of road. Now, how that would unfold in practice, I don't know. I haven't seen anything to say how that would unfold in practice. And so, again, that's my whole drive this time around, standing for council, quite simply, and in particular the mayoralty, is poor communication. Whatever information the council has around what the rationale for changing the one-way streets would be, and then of course we can then jump onto the 3 waters and everything else that's going on at the moment. But the communication from council to the public is very, very poor. And when the communication does come out, whatever it may be, it's either not complete or it's certainly not understandable. And so that has to be improved.
Do you think that, I wonder again if you're maybe a bit hindered because you're not in council? So the people that I talk to who are in council are councillors. They obviously they know what's going on in the chamber and they can speak to it.
Sure.
But my understanding at the moment is it's still in conversation period. So no decisions have been made
one
yet.
way, you mean?
Yeah, 1 ways to 2 ways. So in other words, when you talk about disseminating communication to the public, other than saying there's conversations going on right now, I don't know if there's too much more about it. I wonder we'll get to a point where there will be pros and cons. I'm told that one of the reasons that people are vying for the 2 ways is to help with pedestrianisation, which I'm assuming you aren't going to be a fan of. And I'm told that the opponents of it say that the 2 ways are better for traffic flow. So that, again, I might come back to a similar conversation to almost George Street, that seems to be, and I'm only saying seems to be because kind of different councillors have said slightly different things to me in this conversation, the rationales behind each of them. And I mean, I think it's fair what you're saying, but I don't think we necessarily have all the information yet to pass out to those of us in the public, because the conversation's still meandering along, probably somewhere near its infancy.
It's probably a little bit further on than that. I think my understanding was that early next year the final decision will be made, but I don't think that's going to ultimately be a council decision. I think council can advocate for what the council thinks that is going to be best and what the community are saying. But it's NZTA, it's State Highway 1. And so, again, from what I understand, the bottom line or the ultimate decision is going to be made by government.
So what I hear you saying, without using these words, is this is kind of a pointless conversation. Is that out of Dunedin's hands? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when it comes to what is the best option, we don't have that information. And maybe some councillors do, maybe all councillors do, in terms of how the two ways would actually work and the full, rationale behind changing it to that, I haven't seen that. I don't know what that is. And I believe that the majority of people in the community don't either. And so whenever there's to be change, you've got to have a damn good reason for it. And you've got to communicate it. And you've got to communicate it very, very clearly as to why.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That there will clear and concise communication explaining the full rationale behind it is what's needed. I think about the new hospital being built, and I wonder if, and I think I've been, not that I've been correct because I didn't know, but I think I've been informed now that there will be an entrance to the emergency area from both current one ways if it all stays the same. Because my question was, if there was only one entrance, you'd obviously want that on a two-way street, so emergency vehicles could get to it from both directions. But if there's an entrance on both sides, then actually it's a moot point. And I was informed yesterday actually by Councillor Radish that he believes the plans are that there will be an entrance to that emergency area from both one ways, which means, I do agree with you, because for the amount of money it would cost and for the amount of inconvenience it would be for a long period of time, like I'm thinking about the building out and the developing of it, there would need to be a significant benefit to most people in Dunedin. That's where I kind of am on it. So when we get that information, we'll be able to speak more about it.
And look, that's right. But the other big thing, Pat, is when you say I'm anti-pedestrianisation, I'm not.
I don't know if I quite said that. I don't know if I quite said anti, but anyway.
Yeah. The one thing that leads the way when you're dealing with traffic layout changes and so on is safety. Safety has got to be at the forefront. Now, with a new hospital, between two one ways, I don't know how that is going to work. And what I mean by that, at the moment, our hospital is on one way, and then of course one, call it a side street, and the side street is the main entrance to it.
Well, the main entrance is on a two-way at the moment.
Yeah, sort of main. Great Queen Street. Yeah. So, but it's a quiet road though. It's not like, see, when you say two ways going through the middle of Dunedin, it makes me think of Riccarton Road and Blenheim Road in Christchurch.
Yeah.
Two sort of arterials really side by side. The difference, of course, though, is Blenheim Road's got 2 lanes going each way, but they've got a lot more people, and so horses for courses. But I've never liked the layout up there. Riccarton Road, slow, and that's been slowed down a lot more as well. Blenheim Road, I don't think I've ever driven down Blenheim Road and had a run with the lights. And when the lights change to red there, boy, you're waiting for a long time to get moving. And it would just concern me that, if we did go the 2-lane, the two-way option, what is the impact going to be?
I'd also like to know the projections for the future, because to be honest with you, I mean, for people who have been Dunedin born and bred or have lived here for decades or whatever, there's no traffic problems in Dunedin at the moment. I'm sorry to burst the bubble from people who have to wait an extra 5 minutes to get home. There are no traffic problems in Dunedin at the moment. Even, like, I know for me, if I want to avoid a 10-minute extra drive from one side of the city to the other, I just don't go out between 5:15 and 5:15. Honestly, that's all there is. And I remember when I first turned up here to come looking for property, when decided to move down, I literally got to the lights at the end of the Southern Motorway, so where those billboards are, the Southern Motorway by Countdown, and the news on the radio was playing 5 o'clock, right? So it was literally the start of rush hour traffic, and there was 3 cars ahead of me coming off the motorway at the lights. Oh, no, sorry, I lie. I looked at the cars going onto the motorway. There was 3 cars in a queue. So that's the ones coming out of the city to go back to Mosgiel. Like, yes, sometimes we get held up for 5 minutes here or 5 minutes here, but at the moment we don't have a massive traffic issue. But what will it be in 20 years from now? Dunedin doesn't seem to be growing in population very much. Is there some reason why we will be 40% bigger in 20 years? And if there is, then what? What would be the best solution for that? A little bit like my question to you about decisions we don't know about in 2024. Like, what's the situation in 20 years from now or 10 years from now? Well, we should be making those decisions now for things like traffic and traffic flow. And that's what I'd like to know more about.
Yeah, well, the danger with that is, though, what's the traffic going to be? The current direction at least that the council's taking at the moment, is there's going to be less vehicles. And so if that's the case, why would you be, wanting to up the infrastructure to cater for more? When it comes to our population, I disagree with you there. Our population has gone up 10,000 people in the last 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, so 1,000 a year. As I say, it's pretty stagnant.
No, but prior to that, though, prior to that, for decades, it had been totally stagnant.
I'm bringing up the numbers here. I mean, I guess what I'm not saying is it's exactly what it's always been. But, I'm looking at the numbers right now. Dunedin City in 1996 was 120,800. And now it's 133,000. So between 1996, so the last 26 years, it's gone up by about 500 people a year. That's a pretty stagnant population.
Yeah, well, it was stagnant up until about 2010, 2012, and then it really took off. If you've got the numbers,
I guess, yeah. I mean, I didn't have this preset up, but I guess it depends on your definition of took off. I mean, a 1% increase for 3 or 4 of those years, 0%, 0%, 0.4, 0.5. Each to their own. You can call that took off if you like. I would call that not that big a difference. But percentage wise, I mean, it'd be interesting to know, does like urban developers consider a 1% increase a big increase or not? That would be interesting to know. But as I say, since 1996, it's gone up about 13,000 people. That's not a huge rate of increase. So there's nothing to say, even if it went up by 1%, I mean, that doesn't mean a 40% increase in 20 years from now. It's anyway.
But my point, though, quite simply is, from 96 to 2012, that's the bigger portion of that period that you're talking about. Did it go up at all?
Well, I can tell you if you want. I'll rip through them. This is starting at 1997. It went down by 0.3%, then down by 0.2%, then down by 0.2%, then down by 0.3%, then down by 0.3%, then up by 0.8%. So most of that come back, so that'll be stagnant. Then up by 0.6, up by 0.6, up by 0.3, up by 0.3, down by 0.3, down by 0.2. That's stagnant. That's between, what am I up to now? That's 2008. That's 96 to 2008.
Yeah.
So anyway, look, we don't need to debate. We don't need to debate whether you think it's gone up and I don't think it's gone up. I'm just saying there's no evidence to see there'd be a massive increase in population in the next 20 years. That's what I'm saying. By massive, I mean 30 or 40%. Yes, maybe it's another 10%.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But that's not massive. That's another 10,000 people. It's not huge.
Well, I remember back, in my last tenure on council, that in the main, our infrastructure was appropriate for up to 150,000 people without having to do too much to add to it.
Right.
And so, and I say that loosely because, was that just roading? Is it, water out, all that sort of thing? But yeah, who knows?
Well, let's talk about infrastructure, because it seems that our current system, our 3 water system, our 3 pipes, especially stormwater at the moment, doesn't seem to be set to purpose for 130,000 people. So it's interesting you were saying that our infrastructure was good to 150,000 people. From the research I've done, speaking to councillors, speaking to people in council, most people seem to think that, and this is people who are either in the chamber or working with people in the chamber, that our wastewater is pretty good, our drinking water is pretty good, our stormwater needs work. And I think that's evident from floods and stuff, especially around South Dunedin. I mean, Northeast Valley gets flooded anytime there's a big flooding. Of course, one of the big sort of quote unquote controversial issues at the moment is 3 waters being centralized or not. Tell us about infrastructure, Bill. Tell us about your thoughts around 3 waters.
Okay, well, the first thing that springs to my mind, and I'll split it up a little bit. First up, there's no question that our stormwater needs to be improved, but I think a lot of that too comes down to the management thereof. There are parts of the city that sit very low, and they're below the water table, and so there's always going to be certain issues in certain parts of the city, and that it's about managing those best as possible. There's certain other parts of the stormwater system that do need upgrading. Go on to wastewater. The city, the council obviously the city, because it comes from rates, have spent a lot of money on the Tahuna plant. And my understanding, there are other ones as well that I couldn't name that have also been upgraded. When we talk about water, around late 90s, early 2000s, our water ratings were double E. And
are you talking about drinking? You just said water. Are you talking about drinking water?
I'm talking about drinking water, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just checking.
Yep. So drinking water, was a massive issue. We were really down the bottom end, and that was through Suki Turner's time on council in the late 90s. And in fact, I think she even campaigned on bringing the water up to scratch. And I know when she did become mayor, and that work, that discussion was had, at the time 120 million was put into improving our water treatment plants. Mount Grant was brought up to speed, and then the southern plant was then put in from scratch. And there are two different systems that run that. But nonetheless, once that work was done, our drinking water, double A. So my point here is that with drinking water and wastewater, we've invested a lot of money into our infrastructure.
Sure.
What I want to know when it comes to Three Waters is what happens going forward. And so if we all get thrown into these different, groups, sectors, whatever they're supposed to be, and they're run by a conglomerate or certain representatives that are not necessarily from Dunedin, how are they going to, one, make sure that our infrastructure does not go backwards after all the investment that we've put into it? How do they know where our hot spots are in terms of flooding areas, and what are they going to do about it to manage it right?
But are you, just so I'm clear, are you suggesting that you have a concern that should, quote unquote, head office for, are they called Region 4? Is that what it is? This Entity D? If head office was in Christchurch, they'd be like, oh, what, I have no idea what's going on in Dunedin. I mean, is that, because I mean, obviously, when I say obviously, I'm saying in my best estimate, I mean, whether it be a government agency or whether it be a business, if you're providing a service to an area, you have representatives either in that area or able to get to that area. So when you say, what would they do? I mean, it would just seem fairly obvious to me, or logical, that they're not just going to sit in Christchurch and go, I don't know about today, and we'll just send them some more bills, but won't know what's going on. Surely within whatever entity there is, however it works, they know about the needs within that entity, whether it be a Dunedin entity or an Otago Southland entity, which some on council seem to be like more keen to do, or a Canterbury Otago Southland entity.
So Pat, are you talking operationally or in terms of governance?
Well, probably both.
Right. Yeah, because the two need to go hand in glove. Now, operationally, I agree with you. They should know what's going on in their patch, and their patch, obviously, the bulk of the South Island. How does that information get through to whoever's making final decisions, and to what extent? And who will be making those decisions at a governance level? That's my concern.
Okay. I mean, I hear you, right? And what I'm assuming what you're saying is you don't have the answers for that right now, and so you have a concern about not having those answers.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I would straight away say, let's say there's a school in Dunedin that needs new repairs. I mean, that's something within Dunedin that probably needs to go up the chain to Wellington, to the ministry, to get funding approved to come back down to Dunedin. So I think we already have examples, whether it's a private business or whether it's a government agency, as in a government, like Ministry of Education, where local decision, where you're saying, how are they going to find out? It's like, well, that you have local groups or people or workers or however there's local council passing the information up the chain and then getting action. I mean, I'm not saying I have the answer for you, but that seems to be the logical way that it would work.
Yeah, sure. But Pat, my other concern though was, we have spent over the last 20 odd years a lot of money on our infrastructure, and it's gotten us to a particular level, which I think is a pretty high level, in particular our drinking water standards and our wastewater systems. Now,
so are you saying because we're out, because basically our systems in Dunedin are okay. Stormwater teams work, other two are okay.
yeah,
That's what
that's
I've been told by both independent people and by
right.
people on council. So are
Sure.
you saying because we're in hand, why should we be lumped in with, say, Clutha, who needs $300 million on their infrastructure? Is that a part of what you're trying to say more gently?
Yeah, and I do say it in an empathetic way, because
Sure.
especially when it comes to drinking water, water supplies, that should be a right for everybody. And obviously, as you know, we are all one as a country. But where I'm coming from, though, is at a local level, at a council level, our responsibility are to our community, to our ratepayers, the ones who have already paid for our infrastructure.
Okay.
I don't want to see our infrastructure slip in terms of its standards because money's going somewhere else when we've already done the work, but somebody else hasn't, and so they're going to get favoured. That doesn't work for me.
But if we've done the work, how can it slip? I mean,
because you've still got maintenance and upgrades that have to be done.
But are you suggesting that you have a genuine concern that if we had an emergency issue, an ongoing issue that needs to be repaired because everything else is okay, this new proposed governing body would ignore us because there's more important things elsewhere, and that places that are onto it now would get
I'm not saying they're going to ignore us, but what I'm saying, though, is that their focus could be on areas who haven't done what we've done. So they're focusing on other areas to get them to a level which is acceptable, and we're left behind. And now we're paying for someone else as well as a local community.
Yeah, just for clarity though, but you keep saying, you see again, left behind, but we're already at that level. If we've already got an A or a B plus, whatever you want to call it, and other people need to be brought up to an A, we're not being left behind because they're coming to us. We're not behind. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just trying to, because here's another question for you. So on some level, you're basically saying, Dunedin's taken good care of itself, right? We've planned, we've budgeted, and we've future budgeted. This is what I'm being told. And in other words, we have in our planning and our budget what it's going to cost. If other places haven't done that, empathetically, that's a real problem, but it's not our responsibility to look after them. On some level, that's one of your rationales for what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So then I guess my question is also then how small do you make that? I mean, because you could also argue that why should my rates in a part of Dunedin I live in go to Waitati when they've got a problem with their pipes? Empathetically to Waitati, I know it's a problem, but I've already paid rates, and my rates are fixed up. My rates will go to fix Waitati's pipes. I don't live there. How's that really different from my payments going to help?
Did you say Waitati or Waitaki?
Waitati.
Yeah, as in part of Dunedin City.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, sorry. When amalgamation came along, then we all became one of the greater entity, and so. But that's
what's been proposed for Three Waters, to become part of a greater entity.
I know, but it's not the Dunedin City Council catchment in terms of the services that we deliver as a council, and the ratepayers who pay for it. But when you talk about Waitati, of course, that's part of Dunedin. And, to say that we shouldn't be paying for Waitati is so wrong, because it's a bit like saying I live in Abbotsford and you live in Waverley, but I'm not going to contribute to something you need in Waverley. That's definitely not the case. If it's within the Dunedin city limits, then, of course, we take care of it ourselves as a whole. So
we're not all one. Because exactly the same argument, one step removed, can be made about Clutha. Like you're saying we're currently in a boundary, and that means that people in Mosgiel who typically overpay for resources, so people in Mosgiel typically pay more rates for the resources they get. They're underserved in the resources they have for the rates they pay. So what that means is people in Mosgiel are putting more into the coffers that are getting used by other areas of Dunedin. You're saying that's okay, but if you're saying Dunedin, hang on, let me finish my question. Hang on, let me finish my question. But you're then also saying people putting money into the coffers in Dunedin is not okay for Clutha. So you are actually drawing that line, whereas I'm saying philosophically it's the same argument. someone not getting that service in the area they're putting money in, helping a different area. People in Mosgiel putting money into the rates that's actually going to fix up Blueskin Bay. That's not their neck of the woods. There's some boundaries that someone designed at one stage that said this is it, but it's their money from an area that they're not getting the resource for. And part of your rationale for no Three Waters is money going into an area that we're not getting resource for because it's Clutha or it's wherever else needs work done on it. You don't see that philosophically they're kind of the same?
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Because you're crossing over from one council district to another. Clutha is the Clutha District Council. Clutha looks after Clutha. They charge their ratepayers to pay for the services that they receive. And it doesn't matter which part of Clutha you live in, that's what is happening in Clutha. When it comes to Dunedin, it doesn't matter if you live in Blueskin Bay or whether you live in Mosgiel, you are paying the city council to deliver the services required by the whole city.
I understand. Look, I'm clear, but what I'm saying is that's based on some boundaries that have been drawn at some stage by some person. What I'm saying is, philosophically speaking, that paying for something that you don't get the resource for, i.e. someone in Mosgiel paying rates that's getting siphoned off to use in Blueskin Bay, is no different philosophically from someone in Dunedin paying for something they're not going to see being fixed up in Clutha. I'm not actually even necessarily talking about the current way the DCC versus the Clutha District Council set up, because we're talking about a new system. And I just think it's an interesting look into it, that it's the same argument, because I'm not talking about the boundaries. I'm talking about the philosophy of a group of people paying for something they're not getting the resource for, Mosgiel, Blueskin Bay, and the other one is a group of people, Dunedin, not getting the resource they for in Clutha.
So what is Mosgiel not getting?
You
said that they're paying for a lot more than, and they don't get the services.
Well, every councillor that's come in so far, and all the people from within the area, are saying that they're under-resourced compared to other parts of Dunedin. They're a little bit the little brother that gets left behind sometime. But the point is actually the physical pipes going into Blueskin Bay. There's not enough. I mean, it happened in the 90s. You'll know this happened in the 90s on the peninsula when the reticulated sewage system went in. There was conversation then about the peninsula having to pay for it because everywhere else in Dunedin had paid their rates. And why should the rest of Dunedin get lumped with a bigger bill now? Because the peninsula had to actually get theirs upgraded. The in decision was made that the rest of Dunedin, who didn't need to put more money into the coffers to get their system sorted out, would to fix up the system on the peninsula. And there was conversation that went on that said, should the peninsula have to pay for this themselves? The answer was no. All of Dunedin covered it. That's philosophically no different than another group that's underserved, let's say Clutha, who hasn't done well enough or hasn't been able to do well enough with their Three Waters, getting supported by a different area or region. Yes, there's a boundary between them, but philosophically, it's the same. It's the same. I mean, would you have supported the peninsula paying for their own sewerage, like to get like the people on the peninsula only?
Yeah, if they agreed to, which obviously they did, agreed to pay the water rate like the rest of the city was doing. Because you've got to remember, the parts of the city that didn't have reticulated water or wastewater, they weren't being charged for it.
Mm-hmm.
And when certain areas had the opportunity to come on to call it the main grid, the city water as such, city water in, city water out, then their rates went up by, at the time, $800-900 a year. Because that was the targeted rate that they were not paying prior to.
But they didn't pay for it. That was covered by, that went into the whole of the city coffers, and that's how that area got there, because it's within the boundaries, got all the articulated water system put in. And I guess I don't want to actually belabor this point with you much longer, because what I'm saying is I can see if someone's opposition to Three Waters is we've paid for ours, we don't want to fix up theirs. To me, philosophically, it's the same argument as Mosgiel going, our Three Waters are fine, our storm waters are fine. I don't want our rates going towards paying for Blueskin Bay. I think it's the same argument. It's on a bigger scale, and there are boundaries which make it the current thing. But that just, so therefore that goes, if the boundary gets changed, like through legislation, therefore you'll support it, because then we'll be able to say, well, the boundaries now incorporate Clutha. And then your argument would be, well, they're in our boundaries, so we all have to pay for it.
No, I'm not saying that at all. My biggest concern about Three Waters right from the word go was, and if you've got this information, I really want to hear it. Who is going to be charging us for these services, and how much is it going to be? What's happening to our water rate that is in place right now? Is that going to be, just chopped out, and we're going to pay more in our taxes, or is it going to be
it's got all that information on the Three Waters website
as to how much it's going to cost us? I don't think it does.
Yeah, 100%. I haven't got it queued up, but I'll go there. I think I'll find it in about 3 seconds. If you haven't seen this, and it is right there, it's going to surprise me, because it's I've looked up there before. In fact, I've done it because I do a daily news show as well, and we've gone through and find out who's going to be paying more, who's going to be paying less.
So is it going to be dearer or cheaper than what we're doing now?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head for Dunedin, but I can tell you, because it is there. It's definitely on the website. I'm going to have to find it though, aren't I? There's a website where you can go through and click on every single council, and it's in the part of the main Three Waters website, and it tells you the estimated rates obviously are going to go up by X amount or down by X amount, how much you'll pay overall. And for most areas, because I've been through it, I'm just struggling to find it, it's beneficial financially to most regions. I wonder if I can find it quickly. So if that's the case, how will Three Waters affect me? I'm looking for the map. If that is the case, if it ends up being cheaper, does that change any of your thoughts at all?
Well, no. What I want to know is how the governance side of it is going to work, because everything I've heard so far is that we'll be lucky to have a say.
What do you mean?
We'll be lucky to have a representative. Pardon?
Expand on that for me. What do you mean? We'll be lucky to have a say.
What is Zone D? Is that what it's called?
I think so, or Catchment D, or whatever it is. The fourth zone.
Yeah, the fourth one, which is the bulk of the South Island.
Yeah.
That there's X number of seats on that governance panel, and from my understanding, the representation that Dunedin would get there is absolutely minuscule.
I believe, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I believe that catchment area you're talking about has 12 seats.
Yep, that rings a bell. Yep,
I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe 6 are appointed and 6 are elected, and so the elected positions are up for grabs, I guess. I'm not sure how that's exactly broken up, but that's so there'll be 6 seats, and I would assume that you'd probably expect the bigger areas to have more seats. So Christchurch will probably have a couple, Dunedin probably have a couple, and the other regions might have one or two each. I mean, I don't know the exact answer to that, but that seems to be what what it is.
But if you've got 2 from Christchurch, 2 from Dunedin, 1 from the other areas, you've run out of seats.
Yeah. But you just said representation, but there you go. That's the way I understand it will likely work.
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to find this so badly, because I found it. I've looked at it before and it was not hard to find. I'm struggling to find it now. How much for my water in? I'm going to put Dunedin after Three Waters. That's what I'm going to Google. It's annoying me that I can't find a water charges Dunedin City Council. That's
I've looked for it. I've looked for it, Pat. Now I've asked many people. No one's been able to answer.
I mean, the worst case scenario, Bill, is I'll have to just go and find I did half an hour on it on a show I did several weeks ago, and I know that when I did that show, I actually put it up on the screen, and shared the link. I'm just struggling to find it right now. So
just for your info, the things you put up are so small. I certainly can't see them, and I'm right up to the screen.
Okay, well, I mean, it's really been put up there, I guess, for the people viewing. And if you check them out,
okay.
I mean, they've not that they're not for you, obviously, but yeah. And one more Google. I'm not going to keep spending. Oh, hang on. What's this? Proposed fees and change. Oh no, that's Dunedin, DCC. Oh, bugger. Dunedin, DIA, Three Waters. Okay, so let's let me ask you a couple of questions as we sort of wrap this up, and I'll let you talk. And whilst you're talking, I'll be listening, but I'll also be having a look, because it would be good to find this. And if I can't find it, I'll have to go looking for it, find it, and then I'll put it in the comments of the thing so people can go and look for themselves. I would like to know from you, and I've said this exactly to all the other people I've spoken to, according to the ODT, a trio of retiring Dunedin City Council say that city has been progressing nicely. I notice in your candidate statement profile, it says, you say that the current council has totally lost its way, quote unquote. Exiting councillors saying, it's doing all right. You say it's doing terribly. Why do you think you would be a better mayor and run a better council than what's happening right now, that some are saying are running quite well, that you saying is running poorly?
2 words, really: facilitation and communication. I believe that the current environment is such that everyone's just squabbling all the time. There is no leadership. There doesn't seem to be any genuine attempt to get people on the same page around the table. And I think that that's got to start at the top. When it comes to communication, due respects, the only time that I've seen anything come from the current mayor is throughout this campaign. Other than that, haven't seen, heard, nothing. And the sort of commentary that comes, I think, is really quite belittling of people that are in the firing line.
So better communication is what you're putting out there as one of your skill set to be mayor. Is that what you're saying? You'd be, and how would that? Yeah, what would that look like for the people of Dunedin?
Well, first up, I would be making sure that the communication was not just at campaign time. The communication was happening all the way around. That anything council was doing that was obviously costing money is communicated to the community in a very clear, so not through the annual plan document, not through the long-term plan document, but just simple information to say, this is what we're doing, this is what it's costing, this is why we are doing it. And I don't believe that's out there. I don't think that the average person really understands where their rates go. I know that 10, 12, 14 years ago, whatever it was, that the back of your rates page actually had it broken down as to where your general rate went. Okay, we look at our rates bill now, and we can see that we've got targeted rates, and we've got community services, and we've got general rate and so on. But the general rate's the one that, what's it covering? I can assure you the bulk of it is covering infrastructure. But how much of that is on footpaths? How much is on roading? How much is on maintenance versus upgrades? There's the information is just not there, and I don't think that people in the community have too much of a problem accepting that council has to spend their hard-earned money, which they then pass over in rates. I think the biggest thing is that people don't like the thought that there's a whole lot of wastage in there. And there's conspiracy theories all over the show from various folks saying that there's a whole lot of wastage. I think the first place to start is to nail down where is the money going and getting that information out to people without it coming out on some sort of balance sheet that they can't read. That's what I'd be doing.
A voter in Dunedin is asking the question, do you mean like a document is sent out every 2 months to every household in Dunedin? I guess they're saying, how would you communicate that? How would you let people know, inform people exactly where their rates are going? Like, what would be the practical application?
Yeah, so no, definitely not every 2 months. No, I'm thinking more along the lines of a weekly update. A weekly update, which could be on a part of the DCC website, number one, that you can find easily. I've looked for so many things on the DCC website, and I get hundreds or even thousands of options, and I can't find what I'm looking for. So you make it really easy to click on something that is a one-pager to say, these are the things that we are doing at the moment. When it comes to a 12-month budget, that should be on the back of your rates bill. And so I can look at the back of the rates bill and go, right, the cost of running Moana pool or running aquatics across the city is this much. With another note there to say, and user pays is this much, and so on, so that people have a clear understanding. Don't make it something that you need to be an accountant to read, but keep it updated on a regular basis. Now, whether that's through newspaper, obviously website is the key thing, but a lot of people still read the newspaper or newspapers. Have something in there every week, as they do when it comes to these are the meetings that are coming up. These are the meetings that council are having. Of course, everybody's invited to come along, and you can be in the public gallery for these meetings. Well, the same sort of information in terms of its presence in the media, keeping people up to date with what council's actually doing, and in particularly why and what's it costing.
Do you think that, and I'm going to stop looking now because I want to focus on you for the last bit, but I will put it in the story of people for links that they can actually find, because it is there. And if I have to go look through my own back catalogue to find what the link was, because I can't locate it right now, it's there. Anyway, do you think that on some level that information is already there and people just don't access it? Like, it'll be maybe not necessarily difficult to find, but maybe there's a 900-page document that has all that information that no one's going to read. And I think sometimes about spoon feeding people, and no matter how much we spoon feed them, there's always going to be people that go, "Ugh, I don't know what's going on at council." So how would you ensure? I mean, this is a great idea about people being formed, but how do we then kind of make sure that people are actually getting informed, like receiving the spoon, shall we say?
Yeah, that's right. And so again, it's communication. Communication can come in many different ways. By all means, you can lead that horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
But it's not the fact that the information is not available somewhere. It's just it's so hard to find, and you've really got to go on a mission. And because people can't be bothered doing that, they just go, rates have gone up again. Don't know what we're getting for them. Council's just wasting our money.
What would you achieve as mayor in the first 12 months?
So in the first 12 months, that's the first thing. So the communication and the way that we get information out to the general public would be the first thing. The second thing, as I've already alluded to, I'll be looking very, very hard into what can we do about our whole parking issue. And then third, I wouldn't say this is so much in this order, but the council oars, as in, so the 14 councillors all need to be in roles that they have skills to be able to do those roles well.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely no way, if I was the mayor, would I be tolerating the sort of behaviour and the way in which people speak to each other in the council chambers or even in a standing committee in the Edinburgh room, because the lack of respect and courtesy that is and manners that are shown by some councillors when they're in meetings is diabolical, and I think we all deserve better than that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't brought this up with you, but Sophie, I was talking to Sophie Barker, I think, and I think she said that this councillor is, and I'm paraphrasing, I will check this, but I'm pretty sure she said, in fact, you've seen this conversation, you told me, I'm pretty sure she said is the most toxic environment she's ever worked in. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, Pat, it doesn't need to be, but it's got to be nipped in the bud from the top. Otherwise, the kids will keep them fighting with each other.
Yeah. I can't give this thing up. I've gone back to have a look at it. Oh, look, here we go. This is going to be a bit weird because I'm going to put something up on screen that's actually me talking from a different time, and then I'm going to have to try and figure out where it is. So this is going to be a bit weird, but just to show you and to show others, this is the system. This is the page where you can go in and click on any absolutely any council, and it'll tell you what the current average household costs are. It'll tell you what the average household costs without the reform by 2051, average household costs with the reform by 2051, and the jobs created with the reform. So I'm thinking that this looks like South Taranaki that I've clicked on it. Sorry, South Taranaki. The average current household costs are $19.20. The average household costs without the reform by 2051 are $7,400 a year. The average household costs with the reform by 2051, $1,200 per year. So actually going down by $700 a year on what's currently doing it. And I'm trying my, actually, I'll mute it because I don't want to hear myself talking to myself from another one. But this website, you can go right in, you can select all these councils. There you go. So that's Auckland, I think. That's Auckland. The current is 1,000. Without household water, 1,900. Sorry, without the reform, 1,900. With the reform, 800. With 1,200 jobs being created. So that is there, and that is at 3waters.govt.nz/affordability. Do you want to see what Dunedin's is? 3waters.govt.nz/AFFORDABILITY. Right. Assuming it, oh, look at that. Look at that. I was happy to stick with it. We stuck with it and we won in the end. Where is it? Oh, unless they've changed it, unless something's gone away. I'm on affordability. 3waters.govt.nz. Oh, maybe that's been changed. AFFORD, afford, ABILITY. Right, we're going there. Affordability. Redirects it. So maybe they've updated something and maybe it's not there anymore. So it's difficult to find, which is a shame. So I can't show you, but look, I mean, I'm pretty sure because we're a Dunedin based show, we went and had a look at Dunedin. Can I find it though? That's the question. Yeah, anyway. So there was the information that was put out. So it was there. If I can find that same link again, although maybe it's been taken down.
But as I said right from the start, impossible to find unless you're on
it wasn't. Well, it wasn't. Maybe it's changed now. It's been up there for a long time. I've looked at it several times, which is why I was getting a bit annoyed with myself that I couldn't find it because I have seen it before and it has been there, but maybe they're changing something on the website.
Do you think that every person in the city that is interested in it should have to go digging for that information? Shouldn't that be?
But you're missing my point. You didn't have to go digging for it. It was there. It was very easy to find. I don't know why it's not there now, but obviously it's something's changed with their system or they're upgrading it or something. I don't know. But I've been all through it and I've all looked through it when I started hearing about it. So if I found it very easily, anyone else could have found it very easily as well. Look, it's we've actually gone over a bit than what I said we would do, but I will ask you the last question that I'm asking every person, which is why are you the best person to be the mayor for Dunedin moving forward?
I'm a practical person. I have manners. I have courtesy. I care about the people that I'm working with. I will be very, very strong when it comes to getting points across, but it's got to be done with respect. When it comes to community and business, listening is my basically probably best qualification because in 40 years in the music game, trust me, you cannot play music if you don't listen. It's just totally impossible. Same as being an entertainer. It is about facilitation. It's about bringing people on board. It's about going on a particular journey with leadership, but allowing everybody to have their say and play their role.
Thanks for joining us. Only because I really wanted to give you the information. I found Dunedin. So there you go.
Excellent.
So this is the government. This is the government projection. The current average household water costs are $1,000 a year.
Yep.
The average household costs without the reform by 2051 will be $5,000 a year. The average household costs with the reform by 2051 will be $1,600 a year. So an increase of what there is now, but far less by a third of what they project they will be without it. And within Dunedin, I mean, concerned about how things would happen, they are saying it will create 454 jobs. So there's the projections. You were saying, what's it going to cost? How much? There it is. That's what the government's put out. Now, I'm not standing by that because I'm not saying I back the government in this, but you wanted the information. There's the information. I don't know why it's harder to find now, but that's what they have put out for several months. So, all right, Bill. Hey, look, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being with us today. I apologize it went a little bit longer, but I really wanted to find that thing that I said was findable, and we found it a certain interesting way, but we did find it in the end. All the best with your run up to the election. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time, Bill. That is Bill Acklin running for Dunedin City Mayor here in Dunedin on BHN Dunedin. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Pat.